Hey, my name is River Ford, and I am wanting to discuss the theistic argument of the fine tuning of the universe. It is so cool to think about the way that physics works together. It is like the whole system of all creation of all the universe is this equilibrium where it is so perfectly balanced on the left side and on the right side that somehow, some way, everything exists because everything cohabitates with each other in a perfect unity. If there is a slight, and I mean like slight difference in the way that anything is changed, like for an example, if we were a few 100 miles further from the sun in our orbit, then we would freeze to death. Whereas then, if we were 100 miles closer, not necessarily 100, but close to 1,000 miles closer to the sun, we would burn. We would just completely be evaporated. And the way that our Earth orbits the sun is just a small example of the fine tuning argument that there is a designer who tuned all the little bitty details of the universe to allow life to exist in this very moment and on this very planet. Whereas on other planets, you do not see the fine tuning of gravity and of the molecular level where things exist only because there are certain elements that allow it to. Um, there's also the argument of the physics as in like mathematics and how God is ultimately the ultimate mathematician, but Richard Dickey, spelled Dicke, he is supposedly the one who came up with, who like solidified the fine tuning argument in 1961. But there are also many different philosophers that have been accredited to coming up with the fine tuning argument. A more modern one, his name is John Lennox, and he is a mathematician slash philosopher from Oxford University. And he argues of the fine tuning of the universe through not just through physics alone, but through mathematics and how the equations all equate, that somehow, some way, these would not have showed up out of the blue, just out of some random combustion of kinetic energy from a bunch of stardust that would have created mathematicians that are logical and are consistent every single time you run them, but that they had to be designed by a creator outside of the universe who had stepped in to the universe in order to allow things to happen. The same thing with gravity. He goes on to talk about, if gravity is just a little bit stronger than what it actually is, and it would collapse everything into each other, and it would ball up, and there would not be any chance of life to exist. There are so many different cool things to speak about with fine tuning when it comes to really proving the existence of God. And I personally, it's probably one of my favorite theistic arguments because you really cannot rebuttal it. There is nothing that you can argue against it. The only real thing that is kind of objective, or not as objective, it is, it is brought against fine tuning, is the probability of the Goldilocks system pretty much existing anywhere else. It's like we don't know how to run those numbers, and we do not have an exact probability of it ever, if it ever occurring, because with all the, unlimited amount of galaxies that exist, it's hard to really run the probability of it ever actually happening again, which honestly would probably counteract into the fine tuning and how unprobable it actually is, and that we can and we have studied multiple, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of galaxies, and yet we still haven't found life because there isn't this Goldilocks system that is able to provide life exactly how the fine tuning argument is. I love to talk about this, and I'd probably talk with someone who tries to argue against the fine tuning argument, as in probably a philosophical argument. So that's probably when I would bring it up. And I probably wouldn't share it in a gospel conversation unless the guy or the woman brought it up against. I would probably kind of go with it, but in a way that like God cares enough about us that he fine-tuned us in a way that we can respond to his voice and his love and his call to surrender. And that's who Jesus is.